So the first question is, and I will let Dr. Rob weigh in on these as well. So don't worry, you're not just getting my input. Dr. Rob will see these and be able to tag on as well. So my husband was unfaithful for more than 40 years. I am so sorry. And I'm going to tell you about some resources for you with physical sex affairs, cyber sex, long-term emotional affairs, porn, et cetera, et cetera. When he had women business associates or needed to hire someone, he would repeatedly look up the women applicants or business associates on the internet to find info and pictures of them. His recovery has been bare bones. He has not had a therapist and behaves as a dry drunk. When I told him to get a therapist or leave, he sought recommendations he received. And then, let's see. Okay, oops, here's the whole thing. Where he did, let's see. He would repeatedly look up. Yeah, I got that. Here's the rest. I told him to get a therapist or leave, and then there's no more. So I don't know. You need to finish that one. Sorry, but if he's looking for recommendations, I mean, so here's the deal. This is 40 years of this. Actually, it preceded you, no doubt. So if you're, he got breads for women. He started looking them up on the internet, even after I told him I would not feel safe. He continued to look up women. And so you set a clear boundary of you need to get help or leave. And so then he made some half efforts and looked up women therapists. Sometimes I get questions about finding a therapist, and it's so male or female. It's one of those things where I can understand with this type of thing, when his looking up is looking at women, that would make me nervous too. Therapy tends to be a more female dominated field, meaning there are more female therapists than male therapists. There's some great male therapists, but many of the therapists are female. Now, in the sex addiction field, it's interesting because there are more male therapists who gravitate towards that work. So it's not as heavily female as the regular therapy world, but there still are more female therapists now. But I think a really good therapist, male or female, can hold boundaries, can deal with any transference issues in the therapy session. If this is his known behavior, that absolutely would be called out as part of the work that the therapist is doing, male or female. So I don't know. I would want the most qualified therapist. I would make sure, for me, if it was me, I would want to make sure that the therapist was aware of his patterns of behavior. Clearly, there's a lot of assessment. Like when clients come to Seeking Integrity treatment program, we do a lot of assessment because the acting out is a symptom. So we want to understand what the underlying issues are, what's driving that. And we would want to obviously address all of that in the treatment process. So part of it is, working with a qualified therapist. They have the opportunity to give them specific assessments and identify what the issues are so that they're able to help discern that. But if he's just going to go to a therapist for 50 minutes a week, that will not change patterns that are 40 years or longer old. It just can't. So I'm sorry, but recovery is a journey anyway. And so doing as much as you possibly can. I always say, if you are as actively engaged in your recovery as you were in your acting out, you're going to be fine. That means you're going to be, every day you're going to be doing something that is recovery. You're going to be connecting with peers. You're going to be going to 12-step. You're going to be coming to our drop-in groups. You're going to be reading materials. You're going to be listening to podcasts. You're going to, hopefully he's on this. I mean, if you're the one that's on this and he's sitting watching TV or something like that, that's different. So, it didn't precede me. We're married 50 years. But I'll bet that I don't think the internet preceded you, but typically the acting out The dissociating behaviors, started younger than that. So, there may have been a disconnect. There may have been something that happened. I don't know. So working with a qualified therapist is going to be able to help, identify what those issues are. But again, even if it's 35 years old, that's a long time, and a 50-minute session once a week, isn't enough. Now let's talk about you. The old lady posse is tomorrow morning. That's at 8:30 in the morning Pacific time every Tuesday, and that's a great group. They named it that way. It was for support, but also for accountability. That group has a little different purpose than our regular betrayed partner groups. Susan Anderson is the moderator of that one, and I would invite you to join that. But the podcast, the webinars, I'm glad you're here. All of these resources, are great resources. If he has not already participated in the Sex and Porn Addiction 101 work groups, the next one starts September 1st, and that is an opportunity. It's the psychoeducation component that doesn't happen in the individual therapy sessions. So it's an opportunity to get that information and then be working with a qualified therapist. That's the stuff that something comes up while they're working doing the homework, or they're having the lecture or whatever. And that's the information that can be brought to the, to the therapist. So it's a great opportunity. And I think his willingness to show you where he's willing to step up, is really good information for you. If it's always you have to, kicking and screaming, he's, being dragged to something that's more challenging. So, you made a clear boundary. You either get help or else. So, it's his opportunity to show up and do some different work. So, okay. So the next question. In a video you did called Sex Addiction is Not, the very first thing you said was that someone being bipolar manic may not be a sex addict. My husband has struggled with bipolar for many years. We are just beginning to understand that has meant and how it has manifested in his life and his acting out. He would be in mania for months and months at a time. Many of these acting out times, in looking back, seem to correspond with these manic times. However, when he does the questionnaire for sex addiction, he answers yes to many. How would we know if this is hypersexuality from mania or sex addiction or both? Oh, good. Dr. Rob, you got here just in time. I was like going to.
Hey.
Hi. So the
I
question,
heard a little bit of that.
yeah, I'm going to put it in the answered so you can see it. But this is one. So it's in a video. It's the second. I think you'll see it. So in a video you did called "Sex Addiction Is Not." The very first thing you said was that someone being bipolar. Can you see that one?
Yeah, I see the whole question. I heard you say
Okay.
it as well.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a pretty simple answer, actually, which is if someone's taking their medication and they're stable from their bipolar disorder, they're sleeping, they're not irritable, they're not racing around for days at a time, they're not lying in bed depressed. If they are stable and the sexual behavior was part of mania, then they shouldn't be having any of this behavior when they're stable because it's not coming out of the mania. And it really is obvious, like if someone's on their lithium or their whatever it is that they're taking, when they go off it and get manic, they spend, they sex. And so it may well be that the things that were checked off were things that absolutely were true when he was manic, but aren't really true in the day-to-day. So to me, what I just said is true, but also it might be, to me, this is an interview question. Like I would want to do an assessment or an evaluation because there's two things to kind of pick apart. And sometimes we don't always see the problem. I mentioned this, Tammy, to a couple earlier, that people often call you or come into treatment and they're saying, oh, the porn is the problem. My spouse found me with the porn. I have porn all over my computer. And so they come in with a porn problem in their minds, but what they don't realize is that having the affairs is also the problem. And the way they manage, their flirting at the office, and just all of it is a problem. They only often come in to see the issue that they are coming in for. If someone's coming in for the sexual behavior and they're stable when they're on their meds, they're probably not a sex addict.
So I want you to weigh in on the previous question. The short version is his behavior for almost 40 years has been like looking up female candidates for jobs and things so very hyper focused on images of women and like probably hiring certain women anyway. So in looking for a qualified therapist, there was concern by the spouse that if he goes to a female, and what are your thoughts on if it's a qualified therapist, male or female? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are certainly troubled therapists out there who are in it for getting something from their clients. But I'd like to think that Tami and I have had enough experience with professionals who really understand how to work with human sexuality. You have to understand, like, the most egregious thing I could do, other than tell everybody what you told me in session, probably is trying to be sexual with you. And so it's not just about working with a female. It would be, number one, we'd have to be pretty troubled. Number two, that female would have to, you would know, because you would walk in and she would be dressed in ways that would not seem to service a female. So most of us are not going to do that. A qualified therapist, I've worked with a lot of women who come in and say, you may find me sexually attractive. You may respond to the fact that I'm a woman, but I just want you to know that's not going to happen here. And you can talk about your feelings, but I'm not going to engage you in any way. And so I think that to simply say because it's a woman, he shouldn't see her is really not accurate.
Okay, next question. I put this one in the answered. I've recently ended an affair and I'm struggling with trying to reconnect with my spouse. I don't know if I want to be with him at all. How do you know if you're just stuck in an affair fog or still even love your spouse? I feel very confused.
Well, Tami, this person doesn't say how long it's been. So recently could be 3 weeks ago, or it could be a year ago, which I think makes a huge difference. The other thing I want to say is that, does your spouse know about this? Do they know that this was going on? Did they know that you ended it to focus on them? Or is this like you had the affair and the spouse doesn't know anything about it, and now you're just trying to work it out, but he or she never learned of it? And an affair fog, by the way, a year, maybe something like that, before it really, because if you've turned to it for comfort, you've turned to it to feel important, you've turned to it as a distraction, you're going to still do those things in your head for a while. You'll be thinking of them, you'll want to reach out to them. So, just because you shouldn't be connected to someone doesn't mean you don't end up being connected to someone. And if you're connected, it doesn't go away right away. You have some grieving to do. And maybe that's something that's worth saying. And I'm not, you notice, Tami, I'm not being judgmental of the affair. That's not what the person wrote about. But I think, why don't you let yourself think of this person and do some grieving? Sometimes we say, I don't want to think about that because I'm moving on to my next relationship, moving back. I'm not saying talk to the person. I'm not saying reach out, but it's okay for you to be sad that someone who was important to you is not in your life anymore. And if you take that part out, what they were to you, but just that you felt something for them, then you're grieving a loss. And I think you should let yourself grieve that loss. It might make it easier to move forward. But if your husband or wife who you are married to doesn't know anything about this, it's not going to make it any easier to get close to them. What do you think, Tami?
Well, my thoughts were because affairs are so, the fantasy and the high risk and it's not real life. And so it's like in this whole different category. So of course, boring real life, is boring real life, I think part of it is looking at what there was from the perspective of the reality of it. It's not, it's just so different. And, there's the excitement and newness and all of that kind of stuff. And what happens, like we talk about all the time, 20 years later, like if you're with this person, really, like if there really is a chance 20 years later,
5.
Well, yeah, but it looks change, excitement, like you're taking out the trash, you're paying the bills, like all the routine stuff of real life happens. So it's, it's kind of apples and oranges. You're not comparing two relationships on an even platform. It's the drudgery of the normal and then the excitement of the, of the forbidden, so, but it's challenging.
Absolutely right. this is apples to oranges, because you can have so much mystique and excitement about this magical person out there. And yeah, you got to do the laundry and change diapers when you're home. So you can't really compare them. And in your head, by the way, when you're having drudgery or the usual every day, because that's how life is at home, I can imagine starting to think about that, because it means like moonbeams and fun and getting away from all of this. So yeah, it's really not a fair comparison.
One of the things that happens regularly is I get calls from betrayed partners who were the former affair partner with the person, and and it's genuine. I'm not making fun of this. They're genuinely shocked that that person is now cheating on them.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like, well, they proved that they would cheat. They cheated with you. And so what makes you think that it's not going to happen, or that you aren't going to cheat again? Because it goes back to, drudgery. So,
Well, I
okay,
also think people in that situation think, well, they left that relationship because I'm so special, not because they were looking for the new, and now I'm not new anymore. So, hey, Tammy, can I ask a question? Can I jump ahead of the
sure.
line? Okay. So this is truly a marital issue I'd like you to help resolve. Excuse me, but I want to
Okay.
get some help for myself. So I often knock over glasses and cups. In fact, I could be sitting right here and I just do that. And I try to have special places on my desk so I don't, but sometimes I knock them over anyway. So my husband has been saying to me for about 2 years, sippy cup, sippy cup. And I think that makes me feel like a really
Nope.
disabled person in a hospital to, so
Nope.
wait, I'm not done. Hold on. I'm not done with my story. So I ignore him completely, of course, and I continue to make large glasses of things that I knock over. And so I just asked him if he would be kind enough to bring me something to drink during this, because I was busy doing this. And guess what? I got a drink in a sippy cup. And I'm trying to think, like, what does this mean? What should I do?
Your husband cares about you and does not want your technology to get ruined. Mine was to keep the cat from, like, I had to do it because the cat wanted to tip everything over. So I look at it as it's being proactive, and it's one less mess I have to clean up. So I think your husband is fantastic, that he cares so much about you, that he brought you the drink that you requested, and in a container that you don't have to worry about losing technology to. Your
Gosh,
husband is great.
I'm so glad I have a sponsor and therapy, because my thought was, oh, here he is trying to inflict his will on me, and he's going to stuff this sippy cup down my throat, whether I like it or not, to prove this is an addict, right? To prove that he was right.
And this person says it's not a sippy cup, and I agree, because like all of those are the kind of bottles that I use when I'm mobile and athletic, and when I'm out paddleboarding, whatever I'm like, they all have to be closed and contained. So it's not a sippy cup like a child, like a toddler is using. It's really a very sophisticated technology. So good.
Okay. Then
Okay.
I'll thank him instead of shaming
That would
him.
be
I
great. And
appreciate
I
that.
bet
So,
you can tell me how that works out tomorrow for you too, versus going, you did da, da, da. So,
by the way, and then I have to say thank you for doing that. And, I'm really learning the advantages of this sippy cup thing. So I want you guys to know, just to say it, that this is, some of you ask, what is intimacy? In a very small little way, little teeny way, I just made myself intimate with Tammy, because it has nothing to do with sex, nothing to do with attraction. She's in another state, but I let down my guard and I said something that was going on in my life that I wasn't really sure what to do with. And she could have embarrassed me or shamed me or said that's ridiculous. And then I've learned, by the way, that she's not someone I want to be intimate with. Intimacy is not about sex. Intimacy is about making yourself vulnerable and open. And then when someone comes along and does what she did, which is, let me tell you what I think, and here's your feedback, and he's really doing it to love you, I get useful, supportive. I feel like, oh, look, I was intimate and she moved toward me. She became more engaged and supportive. What I think a lot of addicts do is, I'm just not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to not talk about it. And then I don't understand why I'm not intimate. And by the way, your spouses, you addicts, every one of them, I don't know how many are in here, but a bunch, are saying to you all the time, if you just tell me more, if you just tell me what you're feeling, if you just, you got this person who's asking for you to be intimate, and then you're sitting back saying, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or I don't, this is not how it works if you want to get closer to the person you love. So I just got a little teeny bit closer to Tammy tonight because she validated the sippy cup issue. So
Yeah,
Thanks,
and have my
Terry.
own version. See right here. And it's not
Okay.
because I'm, incompetent. It's because I don't want to mess. So, okay. Next question. This one came in at 503. As a betrayed partner, my brain seems to be constantly processing his decades of double life. However, even though my SA husband is in recovery and doing the work, it seems like he can compartmentalize his recovery. He can be happy and light while my brain seems heavy and always in processing mode. Is that normal? One of the things they don't say is how long this has been.
Right.
So, yeah,
And tell us why you say that, Tammy.
because of course, like how are you going to be unfogged, for lack of a better word, because he has to do the work, and then there's the lag time of you actually beginning to think that this might be real. He's known all along that he was lying and living a double life and doing all of those things, processing his decades of double life. So now he has a plan and a program and support, and he's getting attaboys for, like, oh look, you got a 30-day chip or whatever he got, and you're sitting there going, you lied to me for decades. How is this going to be true? Everything I thought I knew is like a lie. Of course, it's discombobulating. So it's going to take longer. It is normal. We often talk about the 12 to 18 months, from the time he stops the behavior. So if there were periods where he was up and down with that, it takes even longer. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can say as an addict that I knew what I was doing for all those years. You didn't know, but I knew. And I knew that I didn't feel good about it. I'm being a general addict here. I knew what I was doing. You didn't. So the fact that you find out all at once, something that I've been doing for decades, is no surprise to me, but it's a huge, explosion for you. So we actually are often feeling relieved, like, oh my God, for the first time, I don't have any secrets. And we actually sometimes, if we're narcissistic enough, look at you and say, I thought you would feel better now that you know everything about what I've been doing. So that's why I wrote a book for men who cheat. But I think we are, to some degree, happy that we have always had this problem, that we finally have some resolution or ideas that it has symptoms and a way to fix them. And now my spouse knows. And so I think we can be quite encouraged by the beginning of the process if we're not in serious trouble. But spouses are going to be knocked flat. And I think part of, Dr. Carnes has talked a lot about this, is that we're at different stages. You are at the earliest stage of grief, which is shock and denial, like this can't be true, and oh my God. And we're kind of at, woo, I feel better for getting this off my chest. So it
And I'm not
takes a while
alone.
to get back in
And this
sync.
is right. There is help, but like, I'm not alone, and I'm not, the unicorn thinking that I'm so terminally different than everybody else and there's no hope. Why am I doing these crazy things? So it's very freeing to understand that there is help and there's hope, and there's a whole bunch of other people that are in the struggle along with you. So, but to your point with the addicts, there's partners in the struggle too. They are in all different stages of it, and they're there to walk alongside you. And we have multiple betrayed partner drop-in groups every week on sexandrelationshiphealing.com for partners, so that you are not alone, and there's a safe place for you to share too. Okay.
Let's keep going.
The next one is at the bottom. If sex addicts are primarily seeking pleasure in their addiction to avoid intimacy, how is it not about sex?
We're not primarily seeking pleasure. On one level, we're seeking distraction and escape, a place to go to be completely zoned out and focused on anything but the stuff that's going on inside of us or outside of us. The other thing is that what we're looking for is a lot of validation, a lot of attention, a lot of feeling important, feeling special, but without having to have a commitment or worry about what they think of us. So what I'm looking for is an intense and exciting distraction from what's going on inside of me that I will have control of, because no one's going to hurt me, no one's going to let me down, and I'm going to feel so important and so special, at least for those moments. Now, it's an illusion, right? I'm paying someone, but but part of it is, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's like a person with eating disorder. At a certain point, they don't care whether they're eating cookies or drinking Coke. They just want to get it in them, the sugar. So I think the idea that we're looking for incredible sexual experiences, that's the fantasy, but the reality of what we're looking for is to disappear. It's like the person who says, I want a Montreal Chateau 59, but they're an alcoholic. And they say, well, or whatever. They like have a basement full of vintage wine. And they just say, I would love to drink. I'd love the history of wine. But they also happen to be an alcoholic. They're not really drinking because it's a Montreux Chat 59. It's because they can look okay drinking because they say they collect it. So anyway, I don't know if that metaphor worked, Tammy, but it was a stab at it.
Well, but I agree with you. And whether it's food, it's sex, it's alcohol, it's whatever it is absolutely looking
Mm.
to numb out and dissociate away from, because if you think about it, if somebody is spending 5 hours fantasizing and planning and all of that, that takes way more time than sex does. So it's really more about the whole process and being dissociated. You've talked too about people being in the bubble, and they don't even remember driving the car to to the interaction. It's like you're so focused on on being escaping from your reality that you're not even aware of driving. So it really isn't about sex or food or whatever.
But I do want to say this, and you're right, Tammy, about the brain chemistry. I think that's really, it's like fight or flight. You don't know what the heck's going on. You're not really present. But I wanted to say one more thing about that you just brought up, which is, doesn't matter
The
what the subs.
bubble.
Oh, it has to be pleasurable. I'm not
Oh,
going to go do things as a distraction that don't cause me pleasure. There are people who are compulsive who feel better and get a sense of escape and relief from behavior that's not pleasurable. And those people wash their hands over and over again, and then they check the stove to make sure it's on. They run and look and make sure their kids are not in the pool for the 50th time that day. And so those people who do compulsive behaviors that alleviate their anxiety, we call them obsessive compulsive, or we just call them compulsive. But people who experience pleasure in their repetitive behaviors, we call addicts, because they are seeking the idea of the incredible food or the idea of the incredible sex, even though, the truth is half the people we're with, you wouldn't want to meet on a day on any kind of basis. Sometimes we just want to do it and be have it over with. We don't even care who we're with. So it's not exactly as exciting as you might think it is.
well, and I'm going to share this. Like I had fun in an acting out, and I was chasing that fun thereafter, even though, if it was one time fun, the next 1,000 times or not, like I never got as high. I never got as, like it was like this amazing, and then it's never the same, and you're always chasing that illusion of what it could be. And then, I'd be looking for where my car was the next morning because I wasn't sure where I'd parked. I mean, like all of the stuff that comes with it, the shame. And so then I couldn't handle that. So then the next day I have to go do the same thing, even though I said I'm not going to do this again. So it's very, it's not fun,
Fun to
but
be
it's
an
trying to
addict.
chase. No, but it's chasing the perception of fun. So
Well, but I really liked how you said fantasy of something drives the addiction, because maybe that helps people understand, like in a gambling addiction, people struggle with the idea that the next hand of cards is going to pay off, or I know this today when I go to the casino that it's going to be my big day. And so they run in this fantasy of how great it's going to be, even though they may go there and more likely not, they're going to lose money, but at least they get to lose themselves in the illusion of gambling, the illusion of the excitement of it. Sometimes when they get to the reality of it, it's just disappearing. It isn't even fun or pleasurable, but it's the idea of pleasure that drives addicts forward.
okay, so next question. I've been sober 13 months since I joined SA. That's fantastic. I have done a full disclosure and passed a polygraph, made a meeting, and have had a phone call 365 days plus in a row. I am committed to change, but all of which has only seemed to stop any chance at reconciliation. Overall, what is the percentage chances that couples make a reconciliation across the nation? Less than 25% question mark?
So I don't know where the percentage came from, but what I would say is it's different. It's not different for every couple, but it's different depending on the couple's stage of life. For example, that's one difference. There are others. So if I'm a young couple and I've been together 2 or 3 years, and this person did the stuff we do, I might decide that I could get out of this. Like, I don't have to be with this person for 20 years, and I don't want to deal with their problem. And then, no matter how good a job you do in recovery, they will often say, this isn't what I want to do. Older couples tend to have a history, family, kids, friendships, church, whatever it is, whatever, whoever you are, whatever, but they have a history and they don't necessarily want to give up. And we're older. So older folks don't necessarily want to give up their stability. So in the beginning, it becomes less important. Getting hurt becomes less important than having a stable life when you get older. Depends on the degree to which you're being hurt. In my work, if you count all the couples that I've seen and that we've worked with, I would say 80% stay together. If one or both was motivated enough to go to treatment, to get to therapy, to do this hard work, and they are committed to, let's see what happens over a period of time. If they're open in that way, I think a good 80% stay together, and the others, and this has always been my experience. So take 25 years of a therapist's experience, and they even taught this in school when I was really, really young. 9 times out of 10 when couples come to us, therapists, talking about breaking up, one of them has already decided. And oftentimes us therapists are in a situation where we're not always helping the couple work it out. We're often helping one partner finally come clean that they don't want to be in the relationship, but they want the support and they want to see their partner supported. And so they need to go to therapy to talk about it. So what I'm saying to you is that most of the relationships that I see break up were flawed to begin with, or had such meaningful problems that this issue pushed them over the edge. I don't think most couples break up over infidelity, and infidelity is a form of illness. It hurts like hell, but it's still, in some level, you don't necessarily want to leave a troubled partner. So anyway, I think many fewer partners break up, and I think the ones that do, those relationships were not headed in the right way anyway. But Tami might have a completely different notion.
No,
She sees
I
people a
actually,
different way.
yeah, no, I really validate, everything in my experience with what you said. One of the things, I mean, it's 13 months, which is fantastic for you, but again, it's still in that period of time for spouses and partners. What I'm curious about is, you're doing all of these things, what support, and it's not that your spouse needs therapy because there's something wrong, but what is your partner doing to get support from other partners and to heal? I mean, there's trauma, there's all of this stuff, and just getting support and help, to heal that, like Dr. Rob was saying, grieving the loss of the relationship that they thought they had, of the person they thought you were. All of those things, take time to heal. So there could be a lag, but your partner may be healing, and it just may be less obvious because you're in a different place and you're going, man, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm feeling so much better. So it just may look different, but working with a qualified professional, at this point, it seems like working with someone to help the two of you, look at this and what you're hoping for in the relationship, or not hoping for in the relationship, would be worthwhile. So
I want to jump back in that question, Tami, because you can read this differently, and I want to, because I think it'll be useful. I am committed to change, but all of this, meaning the stuff, all the meetings and the polygraph and the 365, I'm committed to change, but all of that work I've done seems to stop any chance of reconciliation. So number one, what I read in this is, I did all this for her. And I did, or at least now that I've done all of this, how come she's not, coming back? And I don't think that I think you're beginning to find out why you did all this work, and it isn't to save your marriage. It's hopefully to take care of yourself and look at yourself and be a better person, whether this worked out or not. I think one of the things we talk about is seeking integrity. And by the way, I think there's 7 guys in treatment. 6, 7. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow, so I will be there. It's not a warning. I look forward to meeting you, and I will be there. But every one of them who's in a relationship with a marital partner, male or female, comes in trying to save their relationship. I mean, like I said, people don't come in for the glory of being a better person, and most often people come in to save their relationships. But then they find out, and that's part of our work, I hope, that they're never going to be happy with themselves or their relationships if they don't do this for themselves. And we have a saying, whatever you put in front of your recovery, you will lose. which means if you make your spouse and working it out with them the primary reason you're doing this, you're going to lose the spouse and you're going to probably lose your sobriety. So maybe part of the reason why your hard work seems to stop chances at reconciliation is the reason you're doing it. Maybe your spouse feels like, oh, another thing he's telling me about that he did. In other words, if she feels like you're trying to prove your way back into the relationship, and rather than having some expectation that she's going to meet your, in other words, I would wonder why you're doing all this and what her feeling is about what you're doing before I would question whether you can reconcile or not. Because if I were her and I felt like you were doing this all to get me back, I wouldn't be very happy.
So the next question ties right into this. I am the sex addict and I've been in recovery 5 months. When I share with my husband, Thanos, he often asks, what are you going to do about it? My question is, what are some consistent behaviors which my spouse is hoping to see other than just doing my recovery work? How will I know my actions are on the right track? I understand talk is cheap.
So I have to ask, and I know I feel like an idiot, but what is Thanos?
I can't remember, but it's a specific check. I've heard it before and I can't remember what, but each letter stands for, I mean, my feelings, attitude. I don't remember what it stands for. If you want to type that in the chat real quick, because I can't rember what it is. So,
I mean, I can answer the second part, but
yes.
To be honest, I wrote a book about this, and it's called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. Tammy, if I know her, will probably put it in the chat.
I will.
And I wrote this book because most men I work with have no idea the degree of harm that they've caused in cheating, and therefore in whatever the way they did it. And then they have no idea how to fix the problem because they don't understand the nature of the problem or how big it is. So this is a book I wrote out of the doghouse so that men who were cheating, sex addict or not, could understand how to begin to grow a clue about what your partners need in order for you to heal and reconcile, for them to feel what you're talking about is empathy, that you really, really understand what they've been through and you really care. And yes, talk is cheap, but it does matter how you approach someone, and how whether you're deferential or demanding, whether you're assertive. It's not just about promises, like I promise you I'm doing better, not that kind of talk is cheap. But how do you hear them speaking to you? Like if a spouse gets angry, are you defensive or do you listen? Do you fight for your point of view? Or do you understand that, of course, they feel this way, I've hurt them? So it's not just in what they see you do, it's also in how you approach their pain. And I think, and that's why I wrote that. I don't know if Tammy, you want to add to this question.
Well, so Thanos is feelings, affirmation, needs, ownership, and struggles. And I had heard that before. I've not used that one. So, but I had heard that in my wandering. So that's, they use that as a prompt for a check-in. Like, yeah.
Thank you. Any thoughts about the actual
I always say actions, not just words. So when your spouse is going, what are you going to do about it? It's like, what am I going to do about, things? So I think that's.
Well, and you might say to your spouse, what would make you feel more comfortable? What would you like to see me do? That might help. Okay, Tammy, what we got?
Okay, next one. I am a sex addict and D-Day was 5 months ago. We are due to go on a 2-week vacation in the Dominican Republic in early November. Any advice for an essay going on a beach vacation to make my wife feel safe and to minimize triggers?
Okay, so Tammy, I want to ask you, as someone who speaks to the spouses all the time, they're often female, and as a woman yourself, do you have any thoughts or feelings about this 5 months ago?
Yeah, I know. I was like, I would make sure I have a whole plan for recovery things every single day. I'd be checking in and having a meeting. I'd probably be calling my sponsor. Like we talk about bookends. I'd probably be calling my sponsor before I go to the beach and after I go to the beach, just to remember what my, what my accountability is. I would be doing it. Like if you want it to be a good vacation, what do you need to do? I'd have a conversation with your spouse. What's going to help you feel safe, while we're on the beach? What are you looking for from me? And I think that might be a start. But I mean, the reality is there's human beings everywhere, so anything can be a trigger. So having the conversation with your wife is a good choice.
Um, yeah, I mean, all of that. You're right. I mean, you took my good suggestion away because I was going to say talk to her or talk to him, a wife. So talk to her.
Mhm.
First of all, she will respect the fact that you have enough concern to want to ask her. And also, addicts, I think we just, oh, here's a problem. Let me figure out what to do. Uh, this is a, she's going to be experiencing this. Ask her, like Tammy said, what will make her more comfortable. I also would be curious if she said, you know, going to hike in the mountains would make me feel more comfortable than being on the beach with a bunch of women in bikinis. Are you willing to say, I'll trade those tickets in, or I'll lose the money? You know, I'm not saying this for you, but for anybody, it's kind of like, how far are you willing to go to help your spouse feel more trusting? And with a question like that, after 5 months, my answer would be, how quickly can I get rid of these tickets? Because I appreciate, by the way, that your goal is you want your spouse to feel more safe. Let me just tell you this though, after 5 months, nothing you can do is going to make her feel
Mhm.
safe. She is going to see an attractive woman getting off the elevator, and she's going to absolutely believe that that's who you're staring at. And that's anytime someone comes over to you to ask a question, if they're a woman or they're attractive, when you go have a massage, she's going to check to see if it's a man or a woman. I mean, she is not going to feel safe with D-Day 5 months ago, no matter what you do, because that is not a set of circumstances where any spouse would probably feel safe. But you can minimize the damage, as Tammy said, by having some real communication about how to handle it and what would make her most comfortable now and when you're there.
And I want to go back to, and 2 weeks of vacation isn't a 2 week of vacation from your recovery plan. I mean, every day, but this is a journey. We get to do this wherever we are. Our recovery goes wherever we are. So you can go to, I bet Dominican Republic has meetings. We have meetings online. There is so much recovery work. And the more good stuff I'm putting in, the less I'm likely to be, causing problems in my world. So.
I also like that Tammy wanted the make my wife feel safe. You can't do anything to make your wife feel safe. She has to find her own safety. You can do what's best for your recovery and your, I mean, this is what that line is. You can do the best for your recovery and your healing, and it may not make her feel safe. As we heard from the other one, 365 days of everything didn't make her feel safe. But you shouldn't be sitting back there and saying, so when is the moment at which she's going to feel safe? It happens if it happens, and you didn't make it happen. You were taking care of yourself, and over time, he or she started to feel safe.
My essay partner acted out too many photos of many of my friends, but I only know of a few names through very painful scattered disclosures. I am triggered by my own friends, even though they did nothing wrong. All I want is a disclosure, but my partner says his CSAT refuses to let him do so without me taking care of my addiction, which I have already spoken with my CSAT and even my mother about. He uses it often as a weapon against me, and it is very painful. How do I start to not be triggered by my close friends and have him meet me in the middle by giving me the truth?
Well, that is a bunch of questions in
Yeah,
one, I have to say.
yeah. It is. So, and I'm sorry that your friends, I feel for your, I mean, like they don't even know probably, but they're victims of his, of his addiction. So, but I guess one of the things I'm looking at is my partner says his CSAT refuses. So the first thing I read there is, if it's coming from his lips only and not directly from the CSAT, I would want it verified, validated with the CSAT. I would want to talk to the CSAT myself.
So wait a minute, Tam, I want to clarify that. Are you saying that sometimes addicts come back from therapy and they lie about what went on in therapy in order to get what they want?
I'm saying that, and that sometimes addicts go to their therapist and lie to them for years. So
It's
yes,
true.
unfortunately, addicts lie. So I would not trust it unless I heard it directly from the therapist myself. So
I can't speak to, I'd rather not speak to the taking care of my addiction that I'm working on, and because I don't think that's something we can really speak to. And um, I don't understand the using it as a weapon again, because I don't know enough about that. But I do want to say that um, I have people I work with who are having sex with their partner's friends and best friends, and the amount of violation that that spouse feels, I can only begin to imagine, because it's not just hurting your relationship with your partner, it's making your whole world unsafe. I think this woman truly does not know whether she can talk to someone she works with, or someone who's a neighbor, or someone who's at the grocery store, without wondering if her husband slept with them. And what a horrible situation to be, to not be able to turn around, see an attractive woman, and truly think that he actually slept with them, or had sex with them, I should say. So this is an incredible violation. And I have to say, I don't fully trust him. That's what came up for Tammy, was mistrust. And what I came up for me is, are you sure he just did it with the photos? Because I really wonder about that. You said my friends did nothing wrong. I hope not, but people do all kinds of things and don't talk about it. And so, people who are, anyway, I just have some concerns about the reality there. And why can't you have disclosure? Why does he or the therapist keep making excuses? Is there something they don't want you to know? Like something like this? Yeah, so
Or that he hasn't stopped the behavior. I mean, having a disclosure when he hasn't stopped looking at photos or whatever he's doing, you're just going to get another disclosure. So if he's not ready to be truthful and have a good, clean, disclosure document prepared with a qualified CSAT, then you just get you want to know the truth, but will you really get the truth? I guess that's you probably at this point won't get the real truth. So,
and Tammy, I don't know whether you would, in fact, based on what you just said about truth, I wonder if this isn't a couple that really needs some couples therapy. There's boundary issues, there's communication issues, there's addiction and sobriety issues for both partners. This is a situation where I think having some neutral to guide both of you together, because this is a complex situation. And I don't think either one of you being in therapy would help. I think you need someone who's in the room with both of you, because there's just so much here. At least it couldn't hurt if you got the right person.
well, or sometimes you both have CSAT therapists. So perhaps having your two therapists with the two of you doing a conjoint session to kind of clear the air and get things figured out can be helpful too. So I would talk to your therapist and see, what they recommend. They may work with a couples therapist that knows both of them, and, with proper releases, that could be helpful. So, okay, next question.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dr. Robin Tammy. I'm a betrayed partner of a sex and porn addict and cross-dressing. D-Day was March of 2020. After 45 years of being together, he has always watched porn. The lies and sneaking around are difficult. We are in recovery, but are struggling with the cross-dressing. My partner has been sober since March of 2020. He sees a CSAT who has not really helped with the cross-dressing. He is attending SPAA meetings, and he has a sponsor. I have seen changes. He said he tried on his mother's clothes when he was, oh, fudge.
I think little. I don't think that's a hard one to, I mean, it could have been last week, but my guess is.
Oh, here it is. Oh, I found it. So, he
he
said, he tried on when he was 12 years old. He felt abandoned by
Right.
his mother. Then at age 55, while doing a lot of traveling for his job, the porn and cross-dressing escalated.
I got.
Okay.
And I just say that because it doesn't really matter. The rest of it probably is not germane. So, so the first thing that I saw when I read this is, I'm a betrayed partner of a sex and porn addict and cross-dressing. And while not knowing about the cross-dressing may be a betrayal, if you didn't know about it, you just found out about it, or it's not necessarily addiction. It is what we call a fetish. So there are people who are into feet. There are people who are into being tied up. There are people who are into women's panties. There are many kinds of objects that people have sexualized, and they now really enjoy as a part of their sex and intimate life. And even for some people, wearing those clothes when it's not sexual is just part of who they are. None of us, those of us who are experts in the field and in mental health, would not say to you, and I'm the guy who's, addictive, problematic sex, I know what that is. But none of us who really know what we're doing would say to you that the cross-dressing is changeable or is a pathology, meaning it's a sickness. It's not. It's who someone is. I happen to have an interest in men. I've been married with a man for 20 years. My sexual orientation is not a pathology. It's just what turns me on is, men. And so it's really the same with a fetish. It's not wrong or bad that I'm into something like that. It's that the wrong or bad part would be if I kept it a secret and I didn't let you know. And you married me before. Listen, if I did it at 12 and you married me at 22 and you didn't know, that was not fair to you for 45 years to keep the secret from you. So the porn, whatever else is going on sexually, any activities, sure. And in fact, when you write, and Tammy would probably get this completely, he's seeing a CSAT has not helped him with the CD, with the cross-dressing. We can't help with the cross-dressing. And a healthy, good CSAT would not see that as a part of the addiction. They would see that part, in essence, of the person's orientation. And so you have multiple things to deal with. Not only have you been betrayed as a sex and porn addict partner, but your husband, I guess, has had a turn on, I'll use that, for a long time that you are just finding out about. And how do you begin to come to terms with, this can be stopped, the porn, the sex addict part, but actually that the cross-dressing part is part of him and that he likes it and there's nothing wrong with it. So you have two big issues to come to terms with, and both of them are huge couples issues. So I really appreciate that you're here. I think getting educated, what is a fetish? What is a cross-dressing fetish? You will find if you look at anything written in the last 15 or 20 years, that no one would really call it an illness any more than you'd call homosexuality an illness or any kind of sexual arousal that's non-problematic. So Tammy, I know you hear these questions too.
Well, I do, and actually I'm familiar with this particular one, but the challenge is I just can't see this as something we can compromise on. And what I hear you saying is that's part of who he is. So, at some point he either chooses not to cross dress, which would be a choice to stay in the relationship. Or, what are your thoughts on that? We know people who are were sexually attracted to men who are married to a woman who choose to stay in the relationship with a woman regardless of what their attraction is. So
that's certainly true, but I also see them always on some level having a simmering resentment that you may not even see. That people can give up what their passions, absolutely, but there's going to be some kind of an emptiness left behind. But yes, we work with especially older couples where they're much more invested in companionship and friendship than they are in how hot the sex is. But yeah, you can make any choices you want. Now, it may be, and there are two different kinds of fetishes. There are dedicated fetishes, which means he doesn't enjoy sex unless women's clothes are a part of it. And then there are non-dedicated fetishes, which means he enjoys the sex, but he also enjoys it maybe even more with the objects involved, in this case, clothes. I don't know, if he enjoys sexuality without it or only with it. I think that's something that is worth discussing. But if you say, I can never live with this and I'll never accept this, then you're saying, despite your anger and hurt, that I have learned this thing about my spouse I didn't know, and this is the thing I will hang up the hat on the relationship on. And I'm not sure that something about who they are is necessarily something you're going to want to hang up the relationship around. And this isn't like he chose this lifestyle or he can help it. This is who he is. It's part of what he is, and he can't really change that. As Sammy said, he cannot do it, but he can't change the fact that it turns him on, or that sometimes he might really want to, and all that.
Can you share the story about the feet fetish and the piano with the mom? Can you, because I think that may be helpful too.
So fetishes is interestingly develop around 11 or 12, right around the earliest part of puberty, 10, 11, 12, depending on the kid. And they happen when a child has they're beginning to have their arousal and their sexual, and they're just beginning to feel what we would call adult sexuality. And something arouses them and they get aroused. It's also tied to an experience or an object. So these have fetish. You're not born with a fetish. Fetishes do evolve somewhere around early teens, pre-puberty. And so I had a guy who had a fetish that we were able to actually figure out where it came from, which isn't always the case. But this is what Tammy wants me to tell you guys. So I had a client who had a foot fetish. He liked women's feet. He liked kissing them, holding them, caressing them. He was turned on by women and enjoyed them without it, but he really liked their feet. And what we discovered is that he had a very depressed mom who just wasn't very active, wasn't very happy, didn't make meals for him. He'd get up in the morning, mom would be in bed. I mean, she just wasn't that functional. But she was a musician. And when she was functional, she would sit at home and play the piano. And when he saw his mom doing better, he would curl up around her feet, but the vibration of the piano also aroused him. So he got aroused. There were feet. He felt comforted by the presence of his mother, and somehow this glued together in his head as feet are arousing. That's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just part of who he is. And that evolves out of experience. So I think, isn't there something, I'm not looking at the question anymore, about being 12, or he
Yes,
said he
it
was
was
12.
12. He felt abandoned by his mother. Then at age 55,
Okay.
doing a lot of traveling. Yeah.
So I don't, just to say it, I don't know about the abandoned by his mother part. I think there may be lots of reasons why people do this, but I can imagine he found, and it could be, he found his mother's clothes comforting. It reminded him of her. It smelled like her, and maybe he got aroused in some way. And so the clothes and the smell and the comfort and the sexuality somehow went together for him. That's what it's about. But go away, it's not going away for sure. Tami, I think it's dinner time for us.
No. We're gonna do one more. So my
Oh,
essay, my essay would rather me not bring up his addiction and ask how he's doing in recovery. How can I support him if he doesn't share his accomplishments and his struggles or triggers? I feel he would rather pretend he doesn't have any addiction.
okay. I don't have this one.
It's in the answered. It's the second from the bottom.
Oh, I got the mom's clothes.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
right
second
above
from the
that.
bottom.
Yeah,
Would
second from
rather I
bottom.
didn't bring up his addiction and ask how he's doing in recovery. How can I support him if he doesn't share? Okay. So I think that, what do I want to say about this? First, again, I don't know how long it's been since they've been dealing with this and how long either one of them have known about it. But Tami, I don't know. I really want to ask you, because this is a little complicated for my brain. What do you think?
So the Thanos that was mentioned earlier, that's a set check-in. And so it's feelings, affirmation, needs, ownership, and struggles. And so there's a set little, not pattern, so to speak, but it's a guideline, so to speak, of how to check in. Dr. Rob has talked before about, like, the schedule of my recovery meetings, unless you have small children or children that can read, is on the fridge. So that there's some accountability. I can imagine that if it feels like you always have to ask, then it's kind of like the kid, like, what are you doing for your recovery today? So it may feel parentalized, but can you set it up so that it's like, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. for 20 minutes, we're going to have a discussion and we're going to check in. Could there be a different strategy for how you check in? But remember, like his struggle with triggers, like, careful with that. That isn't always something that partners and spouses, it depends. Like, do you want to know what is his trigger for his thoughts? No. What is he doing? Is he working with his sponsor? Is he attending these meetings? What is he doing for his recovery? That's fair for him to share with you to help you feel safe. But you being the police of his actions and thoughts, that isn't good for you, and is not good for his recovery or your relationship. That was my thoughts.
But if he's not sharing anything, that will turn you into a detective, because you feel like,
Yeah.
wait, what's really going on? And, like I've said before, I think it's great for recovering people to put their schedule of recovery on the refrigerator, and their spouse can see, this is what you're doing Monday, this is the meeting Tuesday, this is the therapy session Wednesday, that kind of thing, like what we're doing and where we're going and how we're in, but the details, I have an obligation to you. If I have a slip, if I do one of those sobriety breaking things, I'm going to come tell you. But if I but I'm not going to tell you about the minor things. That's, I looked at this person, I drove through the wrong part of town. That's really for my sponsor and the people in my program. However, this, and I typed in the chat the link to Thanos. It's on some treatment center recovery site in Texas, but nonetheless, it's on there. And so I got that for you guys. But you shouldn't have to ask about this. He should volunteer on a regular basis. Let me tell you what's going on in my recovery. Tami and I always recommend take 20 minutes every night, or take 20 minutes 3 times a week, or whatever it is, put it on your schedule and talk about nothing but this. How's recovery going? How are you doing with your feelings of betrayal? How are we doing? There's never anything wrong with more communication. So if he, and I can understand this, doesn't just volunteer it, say, I would feel better if we set up a time and we just were, and then when you met at that time, this is what you would both talk about. He could be ashamed. He could be hiding things. I mean, it could be anywhere across the map. He could think, if I talk about this more, it's going to upset her more, and I want her to calm down, so I'm not going to talk about it. I think maybe you should start with talking about why you don't talk about it. And that might be a good place to begin.
And we use this often in some of the other webinars. Kristen Snowden uses this often. I've used it quite a bit. The story I'm telling myself. So the story I'm telling myself when you don't share with me, when you don't do a check-in, is that you are hiding something from me, that you don't value our relationship. There's something, but if you say it in the story I'm telling myself, then that person can validate, well, yeah, I am afraid to tell you, I'm afraid you're going to police, or oh no, that's not how this is. But we have an opportunity in a non-threatening way to discuss, this is my version. This is what I'm telling myself. What's the reality of the situation? So we didn't get to lots of your questions tonight, and I apologize, but come back again. And I have a special guest. I have a special guest because Dr. Rob will be gone next week. So come see who's with me next Monday. So.
And I'm going to take my sippy cup and go upstairs and thank my spouse for really being so thoughtful as to give me a chance to try it without sarcasm.
Yeah, no, you
that's
will.
The hard
You'll do
part.
great.
Thanks for the sippy cup.
No, it's not a sippy cup. Thank you for getting a closed lid so that I don't ruin my technology.
Wow, Tami, you make a good therapist. Did you know that?
I like to reframe things. It's just a whole lot easier. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Y'all have a nice night. Thank you.